Ing ah, ing ah, huh, huh. Remember that one? Well, if you don't, it's because you weren't with me on my first video that dealt with sarcasm. Not that that had anything to do with sarcasm. It's a speech exercise. And since these are videos on communication, well, I thought it was only fitting. Hi, my name is Glenn. And welcome to the third video in a series of 3 on difficult communication situations. In this video, we're going to be talking about self-soothing. So wait a minute. What the heck is self-soothing about anyway? Well, I think that this definition from the Free Dictionary puts it quite accurately. Self-soothing is a deliberate effort to calm oneself. It is an alternative to the use of medications, alcohol, or drugs for managing anxiety and stress, eating disorders, or insomnia. So it would seem that self-soothing is a much more holistic way to go. You know, I have to tell you that this whole topic of self-soothing is really foreign to me. And the reason I say that, well, it's because I'm not big on self-soothing. I mean, my idea of self-soothing is to bash myself on the head harder and harder and harder until it sinks in. You know, to keep pushing and pushing until it's perfect. And you know, with that kind of attitude, I'm really never satisfied. Not really. Yeah, a counselor even said to me once, "I don't have to beat you up, Glenn, because you do a good enough job of that yourself." And do you know what my response to that was? I actually said, "I don't think that I'm hard enough on myself." Oh boy. You know, but the truth is that there are some real consequences to self-condemnation. According to the research paper, Soothing Oneself and Resisting Self-Attacks, the treatment of 2 interpersonal deficits in depression vulnerability, self-critical individuals are more likely to become depressed. They are less likely to respond to treatment, and they are more likely to relapse when they do respond. Adding to this, theoretical and empirical research suggests that there are at least 2 interpersonal processes intimately linked with both self-criticism and depression. These are, number 1, the inability to self-soothe, and 2, the inability to resist one's self-attacks. So these 2 processes, which are intimately linked with both self-criticism and depression, are the inability to soothe oneself, the inability to soothe oneself, and the inability to resist one's self-attacks. You know, that sounds like a good title for a horror flick, you know? The Attack of the Self! Sorry, that wasn't a good joke. I'm trying to make a little light of it, but the truth is that the horror is real when you feel like you have to continually criticize yourself and chastise yourself and beat yourself up. According to the research, it's important to note that self-criticism has not only been attributed to fostering depression, but it also induces shame as well. Great. Shame has been described as experiencing one's external and internal worlds as hostile and persecuting. I'm going to read that again. Shame has been described as experiencing one's external and internal worlds as hostile and persecuting. Yeah, I made that bad joke with the attack of the self, but if this doesn't sound like a horror flick, I mean, creating your world so that it's both your external and your internal worlds are hostile and persecuting. I mean, and doing that to ourselves, I mean, if that's not a horror flick, I don't know what is. Also, experience of shame have been found to be especially prevalent among self-critics. So, good job, Glenn. You know, like I say, the sad thing is that we are doing this to ourselves, you know. And you know, while it's all too often true that much of our self-criticism may have been instilled in us by parents and family members and teachers and other significant figures in our lives at a very young age. Still, at some point, especially in our adulthood, we need to stop blaming others for why we are the way we are. And we need to start taking responsibility for our own actions and begin reclaiming our lives. I'll give you a personal example. My mother was an alcoholic. One minute she'd be telling me how much she loved me, and the next minute she'd be telling me how she wished that I had never been born. Why? Because I was interfering with her love life. My mother was divorced, and she'd often remind me of how no guy wanted to date a woman with a child, Glenn. Great, Mom. You know, her telling me that she wished that I had never been born translated to me that I was worthless. And even though somewhere inside of me, I knew that wasn't true, I knew I wasn't worthless, there was also a part of me that believed that it was true. And even more so because my mother said it. But, you know, having been raised, if I could call it that, by three alcoholics like my mother, grandmother, and grandfather, that doesn't produce the most validating feelings in the world. And unfortunately, I know that I'm not alone in feeling this way. So, as a kid, I found myself self-soothing in alcohol as I became my mom's drinking buddy. And I'm sure she looked at this as a bonding experience. At around 6 years old, she was giving me wine. And at 8, I graduated to Scotch, carrying on the family tradition of using alcohol to soothe whatever ailed me. You know, the thing about alcohol is that it is very deceptive. It made me believe that things weren't so bad. And that it couldn't be that bad because I had hundreds of toys, and not cheap toys either, but great toys. But you know, I now see that they gave me those toys to shut me up, keep me out of the way, and probably to ease some of the guilt that they felt. Because they had to know that they weren't raising me. But all I knew, and back then, was that when I drank, the pain went away. The alcohol made me feel good about myself, and that pain did go away. At least for a little while. But of course, you know, it wasn't self-soothing that I was doing. It was living inside an illusion. But I couldn't know that at the time. The reality was that I was only prolonging the inevitable process of facing myself. At some point, I had to come to the realization that I could not blame my mother for what I was doing to myself. Yeah, you know, she started me down a bad path, but for me to continue blaming her would be only using that as a crutch, rather than own the fact that now I am the one who is doing this to myself. And I wish I could tell you that I made that realization and bingo, my life changed. But it took me decades of hard work to bring that change about. the thing is, I am no longer that dependent little child. I am old enough to know better. I am old enough to know better, and I am resourceful enough to do something about it. And most of us are. If you've had a similar life or any can identify it all, we can develop tremendous resiliency. And I am not that dependent little child. And it was only when I had the courage to throw away that crutch. It was only when I had that courage to throw away that crutch that I could take a good hard look at myself. And that's when I began to heal. It's painfully obvious that we all share common ailments. So then, what can we do to feel good about ourselves? How can we treat ourselves better and remain emotionally balanced? Well, in partial answer to this, according to the article, self-soothing, a recursive, intrapsychic, and relational process. The contribution of the Bowen theory to the process of self-soothing. Bowen's family systems theory states that we must learn the ability to remain emotionally present, engaged, and non-reactive in emotionally charged situations, while simultaneously expressing one's own goals, values, and principles. Let me read that again. The Bowen family systems theory states that we must learn the ability to remain emotionally present, engaged, and non-reactive to emotionally charged situations, while simultaneously expressing one's own goals, values, and principles. How beautiful is that? This is what I am seeking through all my introspective work and my self-searching. I want to have the ability to remain emotionally present in the most adverse circumstances, engaged in those circumstances, not running away, and most of all, non-reactive to these emotionally charged situations. Not getting pulled into the knee-jerk reaction and letting others control me. While, I love this part, while simultaneously expressing my own goals, values, and principles. Remaining true to myself. Wow. How great is this? This is the kind of person that I believe I'm becoming and that I want to be. And this is why I'm sharing this with you. It is important to note that, in addition, this must be attempted. All of this expressing ourselves and remaining non-reactive and engaged and emotionally present in these heated exchanges. All this must be done while simultaneously expressing our own values and principles and goals. But we have to do this without insisting or expecting that others change. Without insisting or expecting that others change. And I've had a lot of problems with that in my life. Insisting or expecting others will change for my benefit. When I can't control that. And it really doesn't matter. I have to change. And also, not to be thrown off track by others' disapproving or anxious reactions. Not to let myself be sidetracked or thrown off or not do what I know I should do because I'm afraid of others disapproving or anxious reactions to me, that they won't like what I'm doing or I'm fearful of what they might do. No, I don't want to live that way. Not anymore. And I have lived that way for a good deal of my life. And I will share that with you. Because I believe that we are all more similar than dissimilar. And I believe that in sharing our pain, and sharing our hope, and looking for ways out, I mean, that's value. That is the way out. And going through the pain to get to the way out. So, wow. And to be able to do this, we must possess self-awareness and remain true to ourselves. To be able to do all of this, we must possess self-awareness and remain true to ourselves. Not always easy things to do, but always worthwhile things to do, no matter what the cost and no matter what the pain. So, one tool for developing this self-awareness is suggested in the article, Soothing Oneself and Resisting Self-Attacks, the treatment of 2 interpersonal defects in depression vulnerability. Lutz, 2008, recently found that compassion meditation, which uses imagery to cultivate feelings of loving kindness for oneself and others, alter brain circuitry in a way that could enhance long-term mental and physical well-being. So wow. So it was found that compassion meditation can actually alter brain circuitry in a way that can enhance long-term mental and physical well-being. I mean, how great is that? Compassion meditation that can help us cultivate feelings of loving kindness for ourselves and others. This is what I wished I had been taught when I was young. Instead of how to drink and never mix scotch with wine. So it would seem that there is little doubt about the benefits of self-soothing. I mean, there can't be any doubt about this. But you know, it's for me, since I can be stubborn and hard-headed, it's hard to believe, I'm sure, but I still find this self-soothing to be a little bit ambiguous. So in looking for additional meaning, I found this from Bernard and Curry, 2011. Self-soothing can be linked to the increasingly popular concept of self-compassion. Self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is a term that I can more easily identify with. I think I can learn to be more compassionate with myself. It's just a concept that makes more sense to me. Whereas, self-soothing fills me with images of telling myself how much I love myself, and talking baby talk to myself, cutesy wootsy, oh, Glenn, you're so beautiful, and, you're so loving and kind, and, oh, look at you, you're so handsome, and, ooh, and I know that's not true, and I'm not putting it down. It's just not me. It's just not me. And so it's good that there are alternatives. So elaborating on the concept of self-compassion. According to Neff, 2003, self-compassion is composed of 3 interconnected aspects, exhibited at times of failure and pain. A, self-kindness, being understanding and kind toward the self rather than being self-critical. B, common humanity, seeing one's shortcoming as part of the broader human condition rather than unique to self and isolation. And C, mindfulness, holding one's distress in mindful awareness rather than over-identifying with or avoiding it. How crucial is that? Mindfulness, holding one's distress, one's tension in mindful awareness, being aware of it, but without over-identifying with it or avoiding it. Not giving it more power than it deserves, if any, and not running away. Really, I found that for me, facing my fears, and I'm not talking about silly things like jumping into a pit of snakes, but Facing my fears is really the only way to go, and I feel it's the only way out of the pain. And at least that's my theory, and it has been working for me. Self-compassion has been found to promote well-being and protect against psychological distress. So, I mean, these are findings. So this is researched pretty well, this material. Self-compassion has been found to promote well-being and protect against psychological distress. And hey, I want more of that. So here, we can readily see that the ability to have self-compassion and or perform self-soothing is very important for our mental health, emotional growth, and our overall development. And I would suggest our physical well-being as well. In addition, studies have shown that self-compassionate styles of self-talk and the use of imagery were helpful in decreasing feelings of shame. According to Kelly et al., 2009, using self-talk to resist self-criticism actually reduced symptoms of both depression and shame. So talking to ourselves, pumping ourselves up, being compassionate and kind to ourselves, especially when we want to beat ourselves up. This was found to reduce symptoms of both depression and shame. How great is that? Additionally, from Gilbert and Irons, 2005, and Bilbert and Proctor, 2006, another, less traditional technique that one might try is called compassionate imagery, which is an aspect of CMT, compassionate mind training, which entails clients visualizing a nurturer and being instructed to call upon this nurturer at times of distress, and even to write letters to the self from the nurturer point of view. So it's sort of like stepping outside yourself to see yourself through a different lens. And even though you're the one creating this nurturer, this technique may give you the permission to say and feel the things that you normally wouldn't say or feel. Because this created persona, this imaginary figure that you create, is not tied to any shame or guilt feelings that you might have. In effect, you can create a way out of the box that you put yourself in. When I was little, many of us had imaginary friends, and I could see there's something like that. I haven't ever tried this, but I might give it a shot. I think that it can be really valuable. The article goes on to point out that this nurturer, this counselor, this guru, whatever you call it, is actually the real you. The one who is not attached to a lifetime of shame, guilt, fear, and feelings of letdowns and failures. It is the free spirit inside of you that knows no boundaries, has no fear, and sees things clearly. I believe that the more we face life, the stronger we become. And I am not saying it's easy. But in turn, facing things becomes easier and easier. And again, I'm not saying that this is easy or fun, because I certainly haven't found it that way. But I am saying that we become more competent at it, and we become better at it. We become more competent at life, and we become better at dealing with it. This has been a lot of material, and I hope it's been helpful to you, because it's really been helpful to me. And in ending, I believe that the inscription written on the Temple of Delphi still rings true. The inscription written on the Temple of Delphi, I believe that still rings true as one of the best ways to deal with the adversities that life throws our way. Sometimes we're bombarded by them. The words were written around 1400 BC. And those words are, know thyself. know thyself. So, my wish for you is that you will always know thyself, and you will learn to love thyself as well. Thank you for being with me. Bye for now, and peace.